Let me tell you something that the finance algorithm does not want you to hear. Boring wins. Not occasionally, not in specific circumstances, consistently, predictably, reliably. Boring wins almost every single time. And I know that's not what you came to YouTube for. You came here hoping I'd reveal some underrated ETF, some overlooked side hustle trend, some clever strategy you've never heard of that'll double your net worth in 18 months. I don't have that. Nobody does. What I have is something that actually works. A collection of habits so dull they could be narrated by a tax accountant reading the phone book. And yet, if you implement even half of what I'm about to walk you through, your financial life will look radically different a decade from now. Let's talk about why flashy fails first, because this matters. When researchers study actual wealth accumulation, not Instagram wealth, not influencer wealth, but real, boring, measured, documented net worth, the pattern is strikingly consistent. The people who build lasting financial stability are not the ones making bold moves. They're not timing markets or flipping properties every 6 months. They're not buying trending assets based on what they saw in a comment section. They're doing small, repetitive, unglamorous things month after month, year after year. And compound interest does the heavy lifting over time. That's the whole game. And the sooner you accept how unsexy that is, the sooner you can start actually playing it. Here are 12 habits that will make you wealthier. None of them are exciting. All of them work. Habit 1. Track every single dollar, but don't make it a personality. Most people have a vague sense of how much they spend. They know their rent, their car note, maybe their phone bill. Beyond that, a blur of card swipes and app charges and restaurant tabs they've already half forgotten. Tracking changes that, not because it's fun, it absolutely isn't, but because visibility is the precondition for any other financial habit. You cannot fix what you cannot see. Here's what consistently surprises people when they start. The categories that hurt the most are never the obvious ones. It's rarely rent. It's rarely the car. It's the $14.99 subscription nobody uses. The 3 separate food delivery fees in a single week, the spontaneous Tuesday night purchase that felt small in the moment. Individually, these feel trivial. Collectively, they represent hundreds or thousands of dollars annually that could have been redirected somewhere useful. The method matters less than the consistency. Whether you use a dedicated budgeting app or a spreadsheet or a notes app where you manually log entries, do it every day. Not to shame yourself, not to obsess, simply to know. Once you know, you gain the power to decide whether each dollar is going where you actually want it to go. The rule of 72 makes this urgently relevant. Divide 72 by your annual investment rate turn, and you get the approximate number of years for your money to double. At 8% return, money doubles roughly every 9 years. Every dollar you currently spend on something forgettable is a dollar that doesn't double in 9 years, or 18, or 27. The cost of invisible spending isn't what you paid, it's what that money would have become. Track the spending. Keep it boring. The awareness alone changes behavior. Habit 2. Stop financing depreciating assets. Here's a financial principle that the lending industry has spent billions of dollars trying to make you forget. The worst use of borrowed money is buying something that immediately loses value. A car financed over 6 years doesn't just cost the sticker price. It costs the sticker price plus the total interest, often thousands of dollars more, on an asset that is simultaneously declining in value every month you're paying for it. You're losing on both ends simultaneously. The financially rational approach is both obvious and deeply unpopular. Drive reliable, older, paid-off vehicles. A well-maintained 5 to 7-year-old sedan from a manufacturer known for longevity costs a fraction of a new vehicle, has already absorbed the steepest portion of its depreciation curve, and does the exact same functional job. The objection is always about reliability, but modern vehicles are built to last significantly longer than the generations before them, and a small emergency repair fund handles the unpredictable maintenance events that worry people about older cars. In virtually every scenario, the math still favors the older vehicle decisively. The mindset shift required is separating the identity function of a vehicle from its transportation function. A car takes you from where you are to where you want to be. Full stop. The version of that function that costs $600 a month and the version that costs nothing per month because it's paid off arrive at the same destinations. Redirect what you would have paid in monthly financing costs into an investment account instead. The gap in wealth between someone who does this consistently and someone who perpetually finances new vehicles is not a small gap. Over 15 to 20 years, it can be the difference between financial stress and financial independence. Habit 3. Automate before before you can spend it. Willpower is a depletable resource. Every financial habit that depends on you making an active, conscious choice each time is a habit vulnerable to bad days, stressful weeks, and the simple human tendency to prioritize what feels good right now over what's good for future you. Automation removes that vulnerability entirely. The mechanism is simple. Set up automatic transfers to your savings and investment accounts to execute the day after each paycheck clears. The money never sits in your checking account. It never appears available to spend. From a psychological standpoint, it effectively doesn't exist. What remains in your checking account is what you have to work with. Your lifestyle calibrates to that number because it has to. Spending expands to fill perceived available funds, which means reducing perceived available funds is one of the most reliable spending control strategies that exists. This isn't a new idea, but it's worth emphasizing because the gap between knowing this and actually setting it up is where most people get stuck. The setup takes 20 minutes. The impact runs for decades. An additional layer, automate increases. Each time you receive a raise, log in and increase your automatic transfer by at least half of the raise amount. Your take-home still goes up, you still feel the benefit of earning more, but a significant portion disappears into savings before lifestyle expansion can claim it. You cannot accidentally spend money that never appears in your spendable balance. Automate the boring part and let the system do the work. Habit 4. Build the emergency fund and then leave it alone. Most people understand the concept of an emergency fund in theory. Far fewer actually have one, and of the people who start building one, a significant number depleted for non-emergencies before it ever gets large enough to actually function as protection. An emergency fund is not a savings account with a different label. It is a dedicated, boring, deliberately inconvenient pool of money that exists for one purpose: genuine financial emergencies, job loss, major medical expense, critical home or vehicle repair, events that would otherwise require credit card debt, or liquidating investments at a bad time. The target most financial planners point to is 3 to 6 months of actual living expenses, not income, expenses. What would it cost to continue your life, including rent, utilities, food, and minimum debt payments if income stopped tomorrow? That number multiplied by 3 to 6 is your emergency fund target. The account for this money should earn a competitive interest rate. High-yield savings accounts consistently offer meaningfully better returns than traditional bank savings accounts, but the key feature of this account is accessibility paired with just enough friction that you don't rate it for a flight deal. There's a subtle psychological benefit that rarely gets discussed. Having an emergency fund changes the emotional texture of everyday financial decisions. When you know you have a cushion, you negotiate differently with employers. You take different career risks. You don't make fear-based choices with your money. Financial security isn't just about the numbers. It affects how you move through the world. Habit 5. Buy groceries like someone who intends to eat them. This sounds condescending, and I promise it isn't meant to be, because I did this wrong for years. The optimistic grocery shop, where you stand in the produce section feeling aspirational about kale and exotic grains and all the elaborate meals you're about to cook, is extremely expensive because the gap between what we intend to cook and what we actually cook is substantial, and the difference lives in the garbage can. Household food waste in America is genuinely staggering. Tens of millions of dollars worth of perfectly edible food gets discarded annually across the country because it was purchased with intention and then bypassed in favor of delivery apps or restaurant visits or the much easier frozen thing in the back of the freezer. Two practical approaches that actually work for real humans. First, plan the week before you shop, not in the store. Know exactly what you're making on which days. Write the specific list. Buy only what's on it. The spontaneous additions that seem minor in the store aggregate into both cost and waste. Second, adopt the audit and cook approach. Once a week, or more frequently if you're inconsistent, open every container, every crisper drawer, every shelf, and commit to using what's there before it expires. This habit alone can reduce grocery spending meaningfully over time because it forces you to actually consume what you've already paid for. The goal isn't culinary minimalism. The goal is alignment between what you buy and what you eat. Close that gap, and the grocery bill shrinks without requiring any sacrifice in actual nutrition or enjoyment. Habit 6. Treat small purchases as what they actually are, recurring costs. There's a particular cognitive distortion that makes small, frequent purchases nearly invisible in financial planning. We evaluate them individually. It's just $4, it's just $8, it's just a few bucks. But those purchases aren't individual events. They're recurring patterns, and patterns have annual costs. The morning specialty coffee bought 4 days a week isn't an $8 purchase. It's a roughly $1,500 to $2,000 annual expense, depending on frequency. The afternoon energy drink habit isn't a $3 indulgence. It's a $700 plus annual line item. The convenience store breakfast grabbed twice a week isn't trivial. It's hundreds of dollars a year for something that could be replicated at home for a fraction of the cost. None of these things are inherently wrong. The problem is the invisibility. Nobody allocates $1,800 annually to specialty coffee in their budget because they never think about it as an annual number. They think of it as a single transaction repeated without scrutiny. The fix? Translate daily habits into annual costs. Run the actual math, then decide intentionally whether the annual cost is worth it relative to what else that money could do. Some things will survive the scrutiny, others won't. But the decision should be made consciously, not by default. Making things at home, coffee, meals, snacks, isn't about deprivation. It's about choosing where your money actually goes, rather than drifting into habitual spending that produces convenience in the moment and zero lasting value. Habit 7. Never upgrade your lifestyle because you got a raise. Lifestyle inflation is the silent killer of wealth accumulation, and it operates at people at every income level. There are households earning $300,000 a year with essentially no savings because every income increase triggered a corresponding lifestyle expansion. The pattern is almost universal when left unchecked. Income rises, therefore the apartment gets nicer. The car gets newer, the restaurants get more expensive, the vacations get longer. Spending recalibrates to the new ceiling as quickly as the old ceiling expanded. The result is income increases without producing any meaningful change in financial trajectory. You're earning more and accumulating no faster, or sometimes not at all. The deliberate alternative is simple to describe and genuinely difficult to execute because it runs counter to every social signal around you. When income increases, do not change your spending, at least not immediately. Capture the entire increase in savings and investment contributions for a meaningful period, a year, ideally. 2. Before allowing any lifestyle expansion. The math of this compounds dramatically. Someone who earns $55,000, lives on $45,000, and captures $10,000 annually in investments is on a specific trajectory. When their income rises to $70,000, if their spending stays at $45,000, they now capture $25,000 annually. Their wealth accumulation rate has more than doubled, while their quality of life remained essentially identical. Slow lifestyle upgrades are still upgrades. You still get nicer things eventually. The difference is that by delaying, you've built the financial foundation to actually afford those things rather than stretching to reach them. The people who resist the social pressure to immediately live up to each income increase are the same people whose financial options expand dramatically over time. The delayed gratification is real. So is the payoff. Habit 8. Know the difference between a bill and a choice. Most households have a mix of genuinely fixed expenses, rent or mortgage, utility minimums, required debt payments, and expenses that feel fixed but are actually choices made so long ago that they've become invisible commitments. Subscriptions are the obvious category. The average household carries significantly more active subscription charges than they consciously realize because subscriptions are specifically designed to become invisible. Small monthly amounts, automatic charges, notifications turned off, each one seems too minor to bother canceling. Together, they can represent a meaningful monthly cost for services that haven't been actively used in months. The annual audit is the solution. Twice a year, pull your bank and credit card statements and categorize every recurring charge. For each one, ask a simple question. Did I use this enough in the last 3 months to justify the cost? If the answer is no, cancel it. Not pause it, cancel it. The same audit mindset applies to broader spending categories. Insurance policies, phone plans, internet packages, these are almost never the best available price for what you're getting after 12 months. Competition in these markets means better options are consistently available. Making the 10-minute call to renegotiate or switch is reliably worth the time. Turning fixed-feeling expenses back into conscious choices is one of the lower-effort habits on this list, and the return on time invested is typically high. Habit 9. Invest consistently and then stop paying attention. This one is psychologically counterintuitive, especially for people who like to feel informed and in control of their financial lives. The research on individual investment outcomes is fairly humbling. Most active management underperforms simple, diversified, low-cost index funds over any meaningful time horizon, not because investors are unintelligent, but because market timing is genuinely hard. Transaction costs add up, and the emotional volatility of watching portfolios fluctuate tends to produce decisions, panic selling in downturns, chasing winners on the way up, that consistently hurt returns. The boring alternative produces better outcomes. Contribute consistently to diversified index funds, set it to automatic, and then deliberately reduce how often you check the balance. This is not negligence, it's strategy. The money's in the market, compounding. Nothing about checking your portfolio value more frequently makes that compounding happen faster. What more frequent checking reliably does is increase the probability of an emotional, reactive decision that interrupts the compounding. Long-term investors who stayed the course through market downturns, including significant ones, consistently ended up better positioned than investors who moved to cash or made major allocations changes during periods of volatility. Time in market, boring as the phrase is the variable that matters most. Automate the contributions, diversify broadly. Set a review schedule of 2 to 4 times annually for intentional rebalancing. Then close the app and do something else with your attention. Habit 10. Use friction as a tool against yourself. If you've spent any time studying behavioral economics, you know that environment design matters more than willpower in almost every context where humans try to change their behavior. The default settings of modern consumer environments are designed deliberately by well-funded teams to minimize the friction between impulse and purchase. One-click ordering, saved payment information, personalized recommendations surfaced at exactly the moment of maximum susceptibility. The process of transferring money from your account to a retailer has been engineered to feel like almost nothing. And feeling like nothing is the problem. Significant financial decisions, even small ones accumulated, deserve some resistance. Adding friction strategically disrupts the automatic purchase cycle. Practical implementations remove saved payment information from shopping accounts, so every purchase requires consciously entering card details. Uninstall retail apps from your phone, so purchases require sitting at a computer. Implement a 48-hour or 72-hour waiting period for any non-essential purchase above a threshold you set. The impulse that felt urgent on Tuesday is frequently absent by Thursday. A physical approach that some people find effective: keep a running list of things you want to buy. Add to it freely, review it monthly. The proportion of items you still care about after a month of consideration versus items that seemed necessary in the moment is typically illuminating. Friction isn't a guarantee against spending. It's a filter that allows considered purchases while blocking reflexive ones. Most wealth erosion happens in the reflexive category. Habit 11. Dress for function, not for novelty. The global fast fashion industry has industrialized novelty. New styles arrive on a cycle measured in weeks. The implicit message, delivered relentlessly through advertising, social media, and cultural pressure, is that wearing the same thing twice in a visible context is a minor social failure. This pressure is expensive. The Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks clothing expenditure, and the average American's annual clothing spend represents a meaningful chunk of disposable income, much of it on items worn a small number of times before being donated, discarded, or forgotten in storage. The counter-proposal feels almost radical given the current cultural context. Build a small collection of well-made, versatile, classic pieces in a palette that works together. Buy quality over quantity. Wear things repeatedly without ecology. Stop buying. The cost per wear calculation is the useful lens here. A $250 coat worn 3 times a week for 5 years has a cost per wear measured in cents. A $60 trendy jacket worn 4 times has a cost per wear that rivals a restaurant meal. Beyond the direct financial benefit, there's a secondary effect that's worth naming. Decision fatigue is real. The mental energy spent daily on clothing choices, on planning outfits, on wondering whether something is still relevant, that energy isn't trivial. A streamlined wardrobe of pieces you always like eliminates that entire category of daily friction. Wear the same things, don't document it, save the money. Habit 12. Build an income stream from something you already do. 11 7 habits focused on spending. This one focuses on income because the wealth-building equation has two sides, and fixating only on expense reduction eventually hits a floor. The research on financially successful households consistently shows multiple income streams, not because these households are running small businesses in every direction, but because over time, they've converted skills, interests, or existing activities into something that generates additional cash flow. The barrier to doing this has genuinely never been lower. The infrastructure for selling physical products, digital content, services, and expertise exists and is accessible to ordinary people without technical backgrounds or significant upfront investment. The framing that helps: don't think about starting a business. Think about whether something you already know, already create, or already do could generate income with modest additional effort. If you're skilled at something professionally, could you consult or freelance for others in the same field? If you have a hobby that produces tangible outputs, could those be sold? If you have genuine knowledge in a specific area, could you teach it in some form? Even modest additional income, a few $100s monthly, materially changes the wealth-building math when that income is directed into savings and investment rather than lifestyle expansion. Combined with the spending habits earlier in this list, additional income accelerates compounding meaningfully. The key distinction from passive consumption: time spent building something has a residual value that time spent watching things or scrolling feeds does not. The substitution isn't sacrifice, it's allocation. If you watched this entire video hoping I'd eventually reveal the exciting part, the one weird trick, the obscure investment play, the life-changing secret that successful people are hiding, I'm sorry to disappoint. There is no exciting part. This is it. 12 habits, all of them completely unremarkable, none of them viral, 0 of them impressive to mention at a social gathering. But here's what they do. They work. Not for some people, in some circumstances, with some lucky breaks along the way. They work broadly, consistently, across income levels and life situations because they're based on math that doesn't change based on the economy or the interest rate environment or what's happening in financial markets. Track the spending, stop financing things that lose value, automate your savings, protect against emergencies, stop wasting food, recognize the annual cost of daily habits, resist lifestyle inflation, audit fixed costs, invest consistently and then ignore it, introduce friction between impulse and purchase, simplify your wardrobe, build a second income stream. None of these habits make a good thumbnail. All of them produce compounding financial results over time. The people who build real wealth, not the people who appear wealthy on social media, but the people who actually own their financial lives, overwhelmingly are doing these boring things consistently, without much fanfare. Boring is a feature, not a bug. Pick one of these habits to start this week. Not all 12. 1. Make it automatic if you can. Revisit in a month. Add another. Your future self will be deeply, boringly grateful.